So far, we've seen how supply chain disruptions and rising energy costs pushed prices higher. But there's another question that sparked heated debates around the world. Did governments simply print too much money? The answer is more complicated than a simple yes or no. During the pandemic, many governments introduced emergency support programs to prevent businesses from collapsing and millions of people from losing their jobs. At the same time, central banks lowered interest rates to record lows and purchased government bonds, injecting large amounts of liquidity into the financial system. These policies helped stabilize economies during an extraordinary crisis. But they also increased the amount of money circulating through the economy. Imagine a small town with only 100 houses. If suddenly thousands of new buyers arrive, armed with cheap loans and more money to spend, but the number of houses stays the same, what happens? Prices rise. The same principle applies to many goods and services. When more money is chasing roughly the same amount of products, prices tend to increase. However, it's important to understand that money creation alone doesn't automatically cause inflation. Inflation becomes much more likely when increased spending collides with limited supply. And that's exactly what happened. Demand surged, supply struggled, prices climbed. This is why economists often describe inflation as the result of too much demand meeting too little supply. But there was another unexpected factor that kept inflation alive: the labor market. After the pandemic, many businesses expected workers to return quickly. Instead, something unusual happened. Many industries struggled to hire enough people. Some workers retired earlier than planned. Others changed careers. Some preferred remote work. In many countries, immigration slowed temporarily, reducing the available workforce in sectors that depended on international labor. Suddenly, employers had to compete harder for workers. To attract staff, companies increased wages. At first glance, that's good news. Higher wages mean people have more income. But businesses still have to make a profit. If restaurants pay chefs more, if manufacturers pay factory workers more, if delivery companies increase driver salaries, those higher costs often become part of the final price paid by customers. A restaurant raises menu prices. A builder charges more for new homes. A supermarket increases food prices. Consumers pay more. This creates what's sometimes called a wage-price cycle. Higher wages increase business costs. Businesses raise prices. Workers then ask for higher wages to keep up with rising living costs. And the cycle can continue. Of course, wages aren't the only reason prices increase. In many places, wage growth has actually lagged behind inflation, meaning households have seen their purchasing power decline. But labor shortages have certainly added pressure in sectors where skilled workers are difficult to replace. Now let's talk about another controversial topic. During periods of high inflation, many consumers begin asking the same question: are companies simply taking advantage of the situation? The answer isn't black and white. For many businesses, costs genuinely increased. Raw materials became more expensive. Transportation costs rose. Energy bills climbed. Employee wages increased. Interest payments on loans became more expensive. Many companies had little choice but to raise prices. But economists have also pointed out that, in some industries with limited competition or strong brand loyalty, businesses may have found it easier to increase prices beyond what rising costs alone would justify. When consumers expect inflation, they may be less surprised by higher prices. That can create opportunities for some firms to protect or even expand their profit margins. This doesn't mean every company is doing it. Many businesses operate with thin margins and face intense competition. But in sectors where consumers have fewer alternatives, pricing power can be stronger. Think about products people buy regardless of price: electricity, insurance, medicine, food, fuel. These are necessities. People often have little choice but to keep buying them. When prices rise in these essential categories, households feel the impact immediately. But even if companies stopped increasing prices tomorrow, there would still be another powerful force pushing costs higher: government debt. Over the past few decades, governments around the world have borrowed enormous amounts of money. Borrowing isn't necessarily a problem. Countries often borrow to invest in infrastructure, healthcare, education, or to respond to emergencies. The challenge comes when debt becomes increasingly expensive to manage. To fight inflation, many central banks raised interest rates. That made borrowing more expensive, not just for families and businesses, but for governments as well. When governments pay more interest on existing debt, they have fewer resources available for other priorities. Some may reduce spending. Others may increase taxes. Some continue borrowing even more. Each choice has consequences for economic growth and household finances. Meanwhile, higher interest rates also affect ordinary people. Mortgage payments increase. Business loans become more expensive. Car financing costs more. Credit card interest rises. As borrowing becomes more costly throughout the economy, businesses often pass some of those expenses on to consumers. And once again, prices remain under pressure. But perhaps the biggest question of all is this: if inflation is finally slowing down, why aren't prices falling? That's exactly what we'll answer in part 3. Stay tuned.